Yeah, let's do about 10 minutes worth of questions. So in order to get as many in as possible, just keep them short and sweet, and we'll get everybody accommodate people as best as we can.
In 1970, I was lucky to be stationed in England with U.S. Air Forces, and at that time, it was just after the North Sea gas was developed, and under the Labour government, England had been well on its way to becoming a third world nation, but the North Sea gas saved them. Now, will fracking do the same?
That's one for me, I think. Yes, it will, because the deposit of gas under Blackpool, they've at last found a use for Blackpool, will be it's apparently likely to prove to be the second largest deposit anywhere in the world. It's very big. And so once we overcome the various greenies and busybodies who don't want us to develop our economy, we think we will be fracking there, probably within the next few years, and it will make a major contribution to the gradual replacement of coal-fired power stations with gas-fired power stations, which are more efficient and they run more reliably, and also they emit half the CO2, if anybody here is worried about CO2, though I probably guess not. So yes, this is going to change everything.
Yes, we hear they. Who are they? I mean, I know it's United Nations that's the front man, but are there other people? This requires leadership and getting along, organization for this world government. Who are they?
Well, there are a lot of academics around the world who have been very much in favour of this over a number of years. You can Google world government and find masses of material on it. But the they who write these drafts are United Nations apparatchiks. They work for the UN. The UN is a bureaucracy. The job of a bureaucracy is to grow. The best possible prospect of growth that the United Nations has seen in its entire history is this notion of regulating the entire world's climate, which requires them to regulate every other thing, including all the economies of the world. And so this is a never to be repeated opportunity for the UN to experience real growth. So that's who the they are in these drafts, at least.
Two quick comments about the Paris Piffelfest. One should keep in mind that the 2-degree limit of the Paris objective is entirely arbitrary. I know something about the history of this. It came from an obscure Swedish publication which was never refereed. Remind you that Richard Toll, noted economist, has an impact assessment model that claims positive results from temperatures up to 3 degrees. In other words, you can get positive results to the GNP from temperatures up to 3 degrees. Of course, that disagrees with the work of Nordhaus, which gives negative results for all temperatures. But that's just a disagreement among economists, which can be straightened out. More important is perhaps the science. I wonder why the climate sensitivity is always calculated on the basis of surface temperatures. If one calculates climate sensitivity based on atmospheric temperatures, let's say from satellites or from balloons, it doesn't matter, one gets very, very small climate sensitivities, particularly if one takes into account also the amplification effect of the lapse rate of the atmosphere, of a moist adiabatic lapse rate. That gives you climate sensitivities which are of the order of 1/10 of a degree, which means that in order to get 2 degrees warming, you need to have 20 times the present CO2 concentration, which is a rather wide target, easy to achieve. We'll never reach 20 times the present CO2 concentration. So I take a very relaxed view on Paris.
Maybe it's absolutely right. There is a discrepancy between the satellite temperatures and the surface temperatures. There is a heat island effect, certainly, also that need to be dealt with. There is lots of corrections that are currently being done, and usually the old temperatures are coming, the new temperatures are coming up, and the older temperatures are coming down to make that warming even more dramatic. And then actually in the 1930s, 40s, it was as warm as today here already, here and in Greenland actually as well. So that's interesting things. I would say calculating a climate sensitivity based on temperatures alone doesn't make any sense, because a lot of that warming actually, I mean, we have to find out what caused the warming. So it could be that the sun has driven half of that, and then of the last few decades, maybe the ocean cycles a big chunk, and there might be a little bit left then for the CO2. This will, at the end, decide what the climate sensitivity is. So I don't think that we should calculate climate sensitivities on the last decades.
Can I make a quick point on this? Yes. One very quick point on this climate sensitivity. Rather interestingly, the IPCC has reduced its feedback sum from a total of approximately 1.9 watts per square meter per Kelvin of directly caused warming to only 1.5. Now that has the rather dramatic effect of reducing its implicit central estimate of climate sensitivity from 3.3 Celsius, as it was in box 10.2 on page 798 of the 2007 fourth assessment report, to only 2.2 Celsius. That is now effectively the official central estimate of climate sensitivity in the IPCC's latest document. But they don't tell you that because they don't want to admit it. What they've done is they've written a 1,500-page document whose main task is to tell you how much global warming we're going to get, and they say, we are no longer going to tell you what our central estimate of climate sensitivity is. They don't want to admit it's come down that much.
I would only trust you to ask this question. How much does it cost us, the U.S., to belong to the IPCC, and how much does it cost us to belong to the UN? You don't have to tell me to the penny, but maybe you could even tell us the website.
It's lots and lots is the answer. I had a question put down in the House of Lords on this. How much had the IPCC cost the United Kingdom since 1988? Because at one stage we were actually contributing the entire cost of the technical panel of the IPCC, which was the thick end of its cost. A socialist government got overexcited and decided Britain would pay for the whole thing. Now, the result of that was that they came back with an answer saying, we do not have that information. Now, that is civil service speak for we have that information and we're certainly not going to tell you.
I would like to know, with the scheduled meeting that's going to take place next year, what would be the most effective way and to get people together to stop this thing that's going on with the UN? Is there any way that, because here in the United States, our political structure is a mess and the press is a mess, so what can people do who are knowledgeable and get the public involved? What is the best way to stop this juggernaut?
If I knew the answer to that, I would have done it in 2009, 2004.
Perhaps I could again... Oh, sorry, you go.
Well, I just wanted to really make the point that we're winning. And that was when Lord Monckton and I took different angles to the Paris meeting next year. We should be very afraid, is the point that Lord Monckton has made so effectively. I think that's part of the reason why it won't happen, because it is just too draconian. Now, the best disinfectant is going to be sunlight. The more information that it can be put out into the public, the less the prospect that it's going to be carried.
Yeah, we'll do one more back here.
one very fast point on that. Please write to your congressman and your senator and tell them to include a get-out clause in the Treaty of Paris. That's the most important thing you can do. That get-out clause means the treaty is immediately rendered harmless, just as the Kyoto Protocol was.
Last question.
It appears that the draft text of the treaty that you had uncovered, or Willie soon uncovered, that you are sharing with us today, seems to be a revisitation of the concept of a UN trusteeship for the global commons that appeared and was proposed back in early 2000 by the German and French governments and even by the EU itself, where they would have a tricameral government, world government, and they would transfer some sovereignty to care for the global commons. Now, this was also done under the auspices of the UN Secretariat dealing with the UN Law of the Sea Convention, because it also covered global warming and the Kyoto Protocol, which couldn't be ratified, and they didn't even have a successor agreement yet even conceived. So this is a much more refined approach to what they had already put on the blueprints.
Yes, I agree with every word of that. That is exactly what they're trying to do. They are trying to concentrate all power in their hands, and I have a really simple way of dealing with that too. No more power should be transferred from any government where the people are fortunate enough to have the right to elect that government to any supranational or global body, unless that supranational or global body has a governing council which is elected by all the peoples of the state parties to that convention.
Yeah. A question you don't have to answer at any length, but I would like to know what the Chinese position on all this is, because I'm getting a huge amount of research papers from China now, many of them government funded, on carbon trading, on all sorts of carbon questions and energy questions. And I think the Chinese position will probably be important. Do we know anything about the Chinese position?
Okay. Yes, on China, I have a certain amount of knowledge because the Chinese ambassador to Italy, with his scientific counselor, attended the 2010 annual meeting of the Seminars on Planetary Emergencies of the World Federation of Scientists, at which I gave the keynote address on the climate. And the ambassador came rushing up afterwards. He said, "This changes everything. We had no idea there was any serious arguments against the official position. I want my scientific counselor to talk to you. Your paper will go to Peking tonight." Subsequently, I was invited to Shenzhen to discuss matters with Chinese political and business leaders and set out the case against the alarmist position. And there is no doubt the Chinese have taken an intelligent and very careful interest in both sides of the science. They've been very careful not, in the end, to sign up to one position or another. They were not prepared at Copenhagen to do what Mr. Obama suggested that they should do, which was to agree to the treaty there, because they did not want any interference in their sovereign right to decide how fast they lifted their people out of poverty by giving them electricity by fossil fuel means if necessary. And he made this quite plain to Obama, and after a 55-minute, very stormy meeting, came rushing out into the Copenhagen, visibly trembling with fury, and announced that China would not be participating any further in that particular initiative. I was the only non-national delegate to get in, because all the others had been banned after a left-wing protest had taken place and annoyed the Secretariat, and I got in by affiliating myself to the American delegation. They kindly got me through the door. So that was a great moment. Now the Chinese position is beginning to shift a little bit towards more agreement with the process, because their particular problem is they don't care how well or badly the West does economically. We think, they depend on us because we buy their products, etc. They don't care so much about that as about where they are going to get enough natural resources from to make their economy grow and lift their people out of poverty, which is a very pointed ambition that they have, because they saw what happened when Russia failed to achieve that. They don't want to be overthrown as a regime. They know they've got to deliver economically. They know, therefore, that they've got to get natural resources, and as Barry Brill will know, they've bought up most of Western Australia. They're busy going around doing bilateral deals and have been for several years to secure natural resources that otherwise we would have access to and to get exclusive access for them. They would therefore be perfectly happy now if this treaty were to go through and were to shut down the West, because we would then be less in competition with them for natural resources than we would otherwise be. That is a very important shift in Chinese policy. You won't see it very much described anywhere, but it is real, and it is actually quite dangerous for the West because it does lend a bit of credibility to their policies.
Okay.
On the China question, I just think Chairman Madhav might have something to tell you
Yeah.
about NIPSI.
Yeah. Okay. I think I'd like to thank all the speakers as well as the audience here. And it has been a wonderful, lively session here. Let's hope, as Honorable Mr. Barry Brill predicted, one of the outcomes of Paris 2015 will be, let there be an embarrassing failure as 2009. I think that's the best hope we can hope for. Thank you very much.